How did the Brezhnev era impact the Soviet Union? How did the Brezhnev era shape the Soviet Union? This period, lasting from 1964 to 1982, was a time of notable developments and challenges. The Soviet Union experienced a mix of political stability and economic stagnation during these years. In the early 1970s, the Soviet Union reached a peak in international power and prestige, especially with the policy of détente and achieving nuclear parity with the United States. However, this era was also marked by a decline in economic growth and a rise in military spending. Leonid Brezhnev, the leader during this time, introduced the idea of developed socialism. This concept acknowledged that the journey to communism would take longer than previously thought. Brezhnev's approach recognized the need for technological advancements and social differentiation to boost economic progress. Unfortunately, this shift led to increased social inequality. The state began prioritizing individuals with advanced skills, which contradicted some fundamental principles of communism. One of the most significant policies from this era was the Brezhnev Doctrine. This policy justified military intervention in other socialist countries to protect communist rule. It was used to justify invasions in Czechoslovakia in 1968 and Afghanistan in 1979. This doctrine limited the ability of Soviet bloc countries to reform and was seen as a way to maintain Soviet influence in Eastern Europe. The economic stagnation during the Brezhnev era was worsened by the extensive military-industrial complex and the costly intervention in Afghanistan. These factors contributed to declining living standards and a growing disillusionment with the communist system among the Soviet population. When considering the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the Brezhnev era laid the groundwork for the eventual collapse of communism. The combination of economic stagnation and political repression created conditions that made the Soviet system increasingly unsustainable. The reforms introduced by Mikhail Gorbachev in the late 1980s, such as glasnost and perestroika, were attempts to address these issues but ultimately led to the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. In the context of communism, the Brezhnev era can be viewed as a time when the ideals of communism were compromised by practical realities. The shift towards developed socialism and the Brezhnev Doctrine reflected a pragmatic approach to maintaining power and influence. However, these measures ultimately undermined the legitimacy of the communist system, setting the stage for the challenges that would follow.